Well, welcome back. It's another build thread. I'm quite touched that I was asked to do this. As with all the builds, I have no financial links to any of these companies. I have just received a box from Ukraine, from flightpoint.co, and this in here is the F5K Maverick, which is the aileron flat wing. It's 1.5 meter wingspan and rudder and elevator. Let's find out what's inside. So first thing, in the top of the wood pack, and if you understand the significance of that, you'll know why I say Slava Ukraine. So, in the box, looks to be a set of plans. Nicely packed. There you go. Save that box. Right, there we go. Oh, look at that. It's almost like colouring in, isn't it? I'll tell you what, I wish they'd sent two of these. I think I could use this as wallpaper in my cabin. That's cool. So that's the plans. Right, so the first 6 off the top are ply. They look superbly cut. Can't fault that. Doesn't look like there's going to be much of an issue cutting those out. So there's those. Right, that's the rest of the kit. There's some honking great thick balsa there, loads of ribs, fuselage sides, tailplane I can see. So that's all the balsa in the kit. Okay, that's everything in the accessory pack. I'll just freeze frame that for a second. So I have the tailplane, the rudder down. Slight experiment for me. I'm using feather cover, the matte version from Angel Wing Designs. I've actually cut out the tailplane and the rudder, and I've ironed it to my 5mm foam board. The reason I've done it is obviously I get a lot of reflection when I'm filming. What I'm hoping for you is that it might work. Now, you can just use clear plastic, or you could actually go around those just with a bit of sellotape. Okay, I have cut out, so everything for the tailplane is marked TP. Now, interesting to note that obviously this piece here in green is actually hardwood. So that pops on there. I've used the old nail file trick. I've got to say, right at the start, very, very impressed with the laser cutting. Very impressed. I'm just going to slide these all into place. Now, I am not using Sino. I am going to be using superphatic resin, which I normally get from Angel Wing Designs, and that's what I'm going to be using. Once it's lifted off the bench, I might add some extra Sino when I've finished, but I'll be doing it outside. But for personal choice, I am going to be using superphatic. So a quick note here, I've just pinned this elevator in place. Obviously we are not gluing that to there, but I thought it was a great way of actually supporting and making sure that this trailing edge, so these two are not glued, I'm using this elevator to help support this trailing edge. Okay, well that's gone together remarkably well. Obviously these two are not glued together. Just took my time. It's a bit like Jenga, but it's all gone together very well. You'll notice when you do the rudder, there is a flat side and an angle side, and the carbon fibre rod, according to the pictures on the instructions, the carbon fibre rod is sat at the bottom because that's where we're going to take the taper from. I have on my plans, there was a little grey shaded area, and I assumed that this was some strengthening. So what I have actually done is I've actually just put a couple of little fillets in there, just to give this a little bit more strength. But I will get in touch with the manufacturers to see if that's a good idea, or whether I shouldn't have done. Right folks, that don't really count. Tail surfaces are done. That don't really count because they're already. Right, a couple of little things. I have done the fin and the rudder. Now, you see I've put the carbon fibre rod in. I've got one last thing to do, which I want to do off the bench. What you want is the nice long thin nut and bolt, and the idea is that pops up there inside like that, and then what we actually do is then just glue the nut in place. So the idea is I'm going to glue that in place so the nut stays in there like so. Being careful not to get any glue, you know, inside the nut. Now, I did speak to Gene at Flight Point, and you don't have to, but it's not a bad thing to put that in. So I've absolutely done that, as I said on the build. I just cut the corners off from the same bit of material and made myself a couple of little strengthening wedges. Right, so we're onto the fuselage. What I plan to do is just run through every picture that is on the instructions on the website, but I'm just going to list them and just come up with a few little top tips as we go along. So the first thing you're going to need is, right, okay, so the first thing you're going to need for the fuselage is, one has RB, one has FB written on it. And you're also going to need these little, I suppose you would call them hardwood sort of nut holders. So just be careful, because we've got to remove the inner bit. And the idea is that what's going to happen is you get the two of the biggest bolts that you've got and nuts that you've got in your kit. And the idea is that that pops through there like that. The nut is going to sit on there like so. Oh, fucking. And then that, with the centre popped out, is going to fit in there. Now I've got a little top tip for that without you making a mess of it. Right, okay, let me just show you a quick tip so you don't end up having a nasty accident. I'll tell you what I am going to do with mine. I have fed that through like so. I'm just putting on the nut, literally half a turn if you want. That then sits on there like so, and the idea is that obviously the nut and this ply spacer needs to be glued in place. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually just going to stick that like that. I'm then going to stick that like that, and then when I'm happy, I'm then making sure that that is not, this bolt's coming out of here nice and I'm going to take that out for there like so. Then I think I'm going to start off with alphatic resin just to hold it in place. Like I said, I'm not a big lover of cyano, and I'd be literally worried about the cyano leaking through, and that's why I've removed the bolt while it's absolutely gluing, so you've got no chance of sticking that into that setup. So that's what I'm doing for this first bit. Right, the next one you're going to need is marked EM, and I was amazed. These are obviously the nut holders. They have come out of there. I'm amazed with the laser cutting, that just putting a sharp knife down the side, that they have come out as well as they have. I fully expected them to break, so that is amazing. So these smaller bolts to because this is for the tailplane, so we're going to do exactly the same thing. It's fairly obvious. We've got one in there and then one in there, and I'm going to add these, the bolts and the supports, in exactly the same way, and then clamp them like I've done the front one. Right, while your wing bolts and tailplane bolts are drying, you need to cut yourself out 2 FS5s, and the idea is that these will drop very nicely. These get glued into there like so. So that's the next step. Just glue those onto there, making sure the fuselage is nice and flat. Okay, that's our the FS3s with these supports glued. The next thing you're going to need is source yourself the 2 FS2s, which are the fuselage sides. Make sure you get these in the right orientation. Now, little tip here. My advice is when you're gluing, so we're going to glue this bit together here, I would actually just stick that ruler on there like so, and make sure that that edge and that edge are all fitting flush, because that will just square everything up. So that's the next step. FS2 glued to FS1. Okay, so that's the tail and the midsection of the fuzz glued together, and finally you're going to need FS1, and the idea that FS1 just drops onto there like so, and I'm going to do exactly the same thing, just try and get these butted as well as possible. So that's gluing FS1 and 2 together, and that's your fuselage sides done. Okay, the next thing you're going to need are these FS4s, and this is like a ply reinforcement, and it's actually there to hold some of the formers. Now, little top tip here, you'll find that in one of the FS4s. Don't chuck that away, because that's a template, and also in the other one is that, so don't chuck that away as well, because that's needed for later. So just be careful that when you're popping the rest of this out, that you don't accidentally lose these. So these are, I am going to now glue onto here like so, and then I'm going to use Superfatic, not Sino, because then I can just get round the whole thing. Make sure that your fuselage is actually laying flat, but that's the next step. Okay, we've put our FS4 sides on. Make sure you've got them orientated the right way, and the insides of both fuselage sides. Now, the next thing you're going to need is an F1. This is the servo tray. F2, this will cut, that pops out of there by the way, but it's just there for your notification. Your wing bolts, and also F3. Just remember that there's slightly different sizes on the wing bolts, which I think, yeah, so it's just, the slightly wider one goes at the front. Right, okay, so fuselage in this position. I've got myself a little set square, and I am going to just go along, make sure they're square like so, and so that's there. It says front for your servo tray, that pops in there like that. There you go. And then this is your F2, pops in there. Then you've got the, remember, the wing bolt, the bolt's got to go underneath like so, and then the smaller of the 2 wing bolts like so, and then this is your SF3 that pops in there. And I've got to be honest with you and say I haven't done any sanding. I have just slammed them in there just for a quick look, and that is pretty impressive laser cutting. So I'm now just going to glue these in place. What I am going to do before I actually glue them is I'm just going to offer up the other side just to see how everything matches up. Right, primary fuselage is glued. So that's that front former, the formers I showed you, the 2 wing bolts just to there. Everything else is still wobbly at the moment. So the next thing you're going to need is FT7 and FT18, and that glues in there like so. Okay, so next thing, we've got our F17, F18 glued together. You're going to need to pop out F16 and FT5, and that is going to, sorry, that's FT6, this is FT5. So the idea is this literally is going to be the bottom, or the top of your fuselage. Let me show you how this is all going to go together. So, okay, so the next bit is going to be basically the top decking. It starts at FT7. You've got your elevator mount. So remember, I personally would put this in first. And make sure you got the nuts down, snigger, and that big hole is at the front. This is FT6, that's going to sit on there like so, and I think I'm going to be using my superphatic glue just to give us a little bit of wiggle room. Make sure we can get this square. This is FT5. And that's going to fit on there like so. There you go, that's on there like that. And then the very last bit is your combined FT7 and FT8, and that is going to sit on there like so. Et voila. Okay, so the next thing you're going to need to cut out, this is a balsa FM1, and this is a hardwood FM2, and you can see they've got a little arrow on them. So the idea is you're going to need to have your fin and the bolt which fits up inside. So the idea is that that's going to fit up inside the locating holes like so, and then the ply is going to go on top. And the idea is you will just feed your rudder, or the actual rudder fence post through there, and then the eye. So basically what these are doing is providing a locking. So I'm just going to glue these, get these in place, and then glue these. You will have to spread this slightly because at the moment we haven't got the bottom covering on. But that's literally how it goes together like so, and I'll show you it when I've finished. Okay, next thing you're going to need are these little triangles, NF4s, NF5s, and they are flared sections. So if you take the top by the engine mount there, so the NF5s go in there like so. So there's 2 of those. So the NF5's at the top, and then at the bottom you'll see that there's a slightly different angle, and the NF4's drop in there like so. So we're just going to whack them in. Right, okay, so you're going to need FT1, FT2, FT3 and FT4, and these are FT4s, F4s, slightly confusing. Now, this is the hatch. So bits you glue, some you don't. So in other words, that's going to get glued to there. These are going to get glued to there like so. And then once they're glued, these then drop into there, and you'll notice they've got a slight curve with them. So that's why I would actually glue this in one piece first, make sure it's very dry, and then the last piece, FT4. So these 2 pieces are permanent. This bit is going to drop in and out. So don't get gluing the hatch onto there by accident, and also make sure that you've got these all lined up and fit properly before you actually glue these, because you might end up finding it's too narrow for your hatch. And also there's your, that fits in there like so. Right, little tip here, it might be dead tempting just to do these freehand, but my advice is to push that up next to a ruler and then check them like so. Also, don't be worried about possibly if you turn that one over, you might actually get a better fit. But that's a top tip there, is just use that ruler just to make sure that you've got them you know, nice and square, so we haven't got a bendy canopy. There you go, top tip. All I did was I put this in this position, dropped it in, and I've then glued these in place, pinned them, so that I can now take this away and then allow this bit to dry in position. So one of the last things we're going to do is FB1, that means fuselage base 1, FB2 and FB3. Now it mentions in the plan and instructions joining all these together and adding as one. I'm gonna have a look at, I might actually do them as 3 different sections just to see how it fits, because if that's all glued together, my worry would be that I might end up breaking this off if I've got a tight fit. So what I might do is check them individually, see how they're going to fit, and then go from there. But I'll let you know how it goes. Okay, the very last thing you're going to need, particularly if you're building it in the electric version, you're going to need the NFN 1, 2 and 3, and this is also going on the front for whatever motor you decide, and there's different hole here sizes. So the idea is these just push out like so, and then they're all glued onto each other like so. One little note to remember here, don't glue this on yet, because if you're fitting the electric motor, then you're going to need to put all your motor mount and everything in first. But just get these glued on, and then you can do some mucking about when you've got your motor on. Okay, quick chat about the bottom of the fuselage. Remember, it was in 3 sections. Now, it might have been my fault, but I noticed that that my fuselage sides had folded in slightly, although they were actually pinned in square, and I found myself having to open up the fuselage sides to get these in. So I've actually put mine in 3 sections. I just personally just found it easier. So just a tip, I would, you know, if your fuselage sides are dead square and you've got the gap, but I found mine had lent in slightly. That might have been my fault, but my suggestion would be is I would put it in 3 sections. So I've literally dropped each piece in, make sure it fitted properly first, and then drop them in. Right, that's the Maverick fuselage finished. Went very well. The only tip is about that bottom sheeting. I would consider doing it in 3 pieces. You've also got this piece here. This is for your electric motor. I've not glued those on yet because I'm not going to make this as an electric one. There's going to be no difference to the build. All I'm doing is I'm putting a nose on mine, and I won't be using the electric motor. There's plenty of people have built it as an electric glider. This one I'm going to use surely from the slope. I might have a cheeky go at bungee launching it as well. Anyway, Maverick fuselage done, and the next video you'll see, fingers crossed, will be the wings. So if you like the video, please like and subscribe, and I'll see you very shortly.